President Trump's National Economic Director, Gary Cohn, met yesterday with Democrats and Republicans on the Senate Finance Committee to talk tax reform. Joining us now is a member of that committee, Senator John Thune. Senator, welcome back to the program. Always good to see you, sir.
Nice to see you, Stuart.
What would the Democrats agree to in the whole framework of tax reform? What would they say yes to?
Good question. I think if there was a big infrastructure component, you might be able to attract some Democrats to vote for tax reform. But otherwise, I think it's going to be very hard for them because they don't. I mean, I think some of them are interested in doing something on the business side, which is absolutely we have to do. But there are not many of them who are interested in doing anything to lower individual rates. And so if you get into a debate about rate reduction, which is what we need to grow the economy, I think you start losing Democrats pretty quickly. But I think it's worth the effort to try and get them on board, look at what we might be able to do to attract some Democrats to the effort.
Now, some division is surfacing within the Republican Party. Your colleague, Mitch McConnell, he says that any legislation on taxes is got to be revenue neutral. You lower revenue from tax cuts, you've got to balance it with getting revenue from someplace else. That really puts some cold water on the president's plan, doesn't it?
Well, it makes it more difficult, Stuart, if you can't take into consideration the effects, the feedback effects that you would get, the macroeconomic effects from policy changes on the economy. And so I think we have different views within our conference about that, both in the Senate and in the House. But I think in the end, hopefully we'll come together behind a plan that is pro-growth. To me, if we can get greater growth in the economy, get the economy growing and expanding at a faster rate, not only does it create better paying jobs and raise wages, but it also generates additional government revenue. And that's the way to get more government revenue, is to get greater growth in the economy.
Well, that's the simple version of tax reform, isn't it? You cut tax rates, whether it's individual rates or corporate rates. You've got a plan of your own. Is it built around the simple cut tax rates idea?
It is. I mean, ultimately, the two things that we think, Stuart, generate the most growth in the economy are, one, getting the rates down, which we have to do. We're just completely out of the game in terms of global competition right now when it comes to making this an attractive place to do business. So rate reduction. Second thing is faster cost recovery, which is what my bill focuses on, particularly for small and medium-sized businesses, which we think are real engines of economic growth and job creation in this country. So those are the two things that I think get the biggest feedback effects in the economy. The most growth will be generated by the rate reductions and the cost recovery measures.
The Republican Party is under very heavy pressure at this point to get something done on taxes and tax cuts. I mean, it would be wrong of me to say you understand the position that you're in, but you do know the pressure that you're on, I'm sure.
I do, and I think it's really important that we move fairly quickly on this. Obviously we've got to deal with the health care reform issue in the Senate first, and we're in the midst right now of trying to come to a resolution on that and get a bill out of the Senate. But as soon as we do that, we need to pivot to tax reform because it has such a profound impact on the economy, which, as you know, has been sputtering along at 1.5% growth for the last 8 years. We've got to do way better than that. We've got to get that growth rate back up to north of 3%. And when that happens, you'll see the better paying jobs, you'll see the higher wages, and you'll see the increase in government revenue. So it solves a whole lot of problems when growth is normalized. And the way to normalize it is to make this an attractive place to invest. And in order to do that, we've got to reform our tax code.
Okay. I think investors are cheering you on, Senator Thune, Republican there. Thanks for joining us, sir. Appreciate it.
Great to be with you. Thanks, Stuart.
Yes, sir.